Nice try, Grandpa. That fake ID wouldn't fool a kindergartner. Pay up or get out. The words sliced through the supermarket's noise, louder than the scanners or chatter. Martin Blake stood still, his weathered hands trembling as he reached for his worn wallet. His eyes, shadowed beneath a faded cap, held no anger, only quiet disappointment. And then, the doors of Pine Valley Market flew open. A black Suburban screeched to a halt outside. General Robert Hayes, in full-dress uniform, strode down the aisle, his metals glinting under the harsh fluorescent lights. His voice, sharp as a blade, echoed across the checkout lanes. Who insulted a war hero in this store today? The young manager Kyle froze. Cameras rose. Whispers filled the air. The store became a stage for a lesson in respect. Morning came softly to Martin Blake's small home on the edge of Greenville. The sun's first rays slipped through the curtains, casting long stripes across the worn wooden floor. Martin rose quietly as he always did, before the world truly stirred. He moved slowly, joints stiff from age, but with purpose. The rhythm of routine was his companion now. His first stop was always the backyard garden. The soil there wasn't the best. A little too sandy, a little too dry, but Martin had coaxed life from it year after year. He knelt down, hands bare, feeling the cool earth beneath his fingers. The rows were neat, tomatoes staked carefully, green beans climbing thin poles, cucumbers flowering along the edge. In one corner, the patch of herbs Susan had planted still grew. Rosemary, thyme, and mint, their scents mingling with the morning breeze. Martin worked slowly, pulling weeds, checking for pests, patting the soil back around fragile roots. He spoke softly as he worked, mostly to himself, sometimes to Susan. "The tomatoes are coming in strong this year, love," he'd murmur. It was his way of keeping her close. Once the garden was tended, Martin cleaned up and changed into his brown jacket, the one Susan had given him their last Christmas together. He placed fresh daisies on the passenger seat of his old Ford pickup and made the short drive to Greenlawn Cemetery. The truck rattled over potholes, the engine a low growl beneath the hum of the waking town. At the cemetery, he parked beneath the great oak that shaded Susan's grave. He knelt, placing the daisies gently against the headstone. The carved letters of her name were softened by time. Martin brushed away leaves and spoke in a quiet voice, telling her about the garden, the neighbor's new dog that kept digging under the fence, how the mornings felt colder this year. The wind carried his words, and he let it. There was comfort in the ritual. Later, Martin made his way to the VA hospital downtown. Every Thursday afternoon, he volunteered to read to veterans, men and women younger than him now, though some bore the same invisible scars. The small room smelled faintly of antiseptic and old books. Martin's voice filled the space, steady and warm as he read from worn paperbacks. Westerns, mysteries, stories of honor and courage. The veterans listened in silence, some eyes closed, some heads tilted, drawn in by the familiar cadence of his voice. Martin never mentioned his own service. He didn't need to. They recognized each other in quiet ways, in the pauses between chapters, in the weight of shared experience, and in the quiet moments between, the past returned. Martin saw himself at 24, deep in the jungles of Vietnam. The air was thick, the ground wet beneath his boots. Nights were the hardest, the world reduced to shadows, every sound a warning. He remembered leading night patrols, watching the faces of young men who trusted him to bring them home. He remembered ambushes that came in a burst of fire, the sickening realization of loss. The moments when he had to push down fear for the sake of those around him. These memories were woven into his days, as much a part of him as the garden, the cemetery visits, the quiet reading hours. Martin Blake lived not for medals or recognition, but for the promises he had made, to Susan, to his men, and to himself. And each day, in small, steady ways, he kept them. The automatic doors of Pine Valley Market slid open with a soft hiss as Martin Blake stepped inside. The familiar scent of ground coffee and fresh bread greeted him. Martin tugged his old brown jacket tighter around his frame, adjusting the worn olive cap on his head, the one with the faded eagle of the 101st Airborne. The weekend crowd buzzed around him, carts clattering, voices mingling with the rhythmic beeping of registers. Martin moved slowly, methodically. He chose his groceries with care. A small bag of potatoes, a pack of chicken thighs, a carton of eggs, and a loaf of bread. Essentials. He studied the price tags, mindful of every dollar, every cent. His pension covered the basics, but just barely. By the time Martin reached the checkout, his basket was light. Lane 5 seemed the shortest. Behind the register stood Emily Rivera, barely 19, her dark hair pulled into a loose ponytail. She chewed her gum nervously, glancing between Martin and the growing line. "Good afternoon, sir," she said, forcing a smile. Martin returned it with a polite nod and quietly set his items on the conveyor. As Emily scanned the groceries, the total flashed on the small screen. $28.63. Martin reached into his worn wallet and pulled out his veteran ID. Edges softened from years of use. "I have my vet discount," he said, his voice calm. Emily took the card, turning it over uncertainly. I'm not sure how to enter this," she admitted, looking around helplessly. "Let me get my manager." Martin nodded. He could wait. The line behind him grew. A man in a suit glanced at his watch, sighing loudly. A woman with 2 children shifted from foot to foot as her kids whined for candy. Tension hummed beneath the fluorescent lights. Then Kyle Dawson appeared. The store's manager was 26, his hair slicked back, sleeves rolled to show off gym-toned arms. He strode over, a practiced grin on his face, but his eyes held little patience. "What's the issue, Emily?" he asked, voice tight. Emily handed him the card. "He's asking for the vet discount. I don't know how to—" Kyle snatched the card, flipping it between his fingers like a dealer with a playing card. His grin faded into a smirk. "This? Anyone can print these off the internet these days." He said it loud enough for those nearby to hear. Martin blinked but stayed silent. His hands rested on the counter, steady despite the sting of the words. "Sir, that's a real ID," Martin offered quietly. Kyle scoffed. "Look, Grandpa, I wasn't born yesterday. You're not the first guy to try for a few bucks off." He tossed the card onto the counter, where it landed with a soft slap that seemed louder than it should have been. Across the lane, Anna Cooper froze, mid-reach for a carton of milk. She knew that cap. She knew the set of Martin's shoulders, the quiet dignity in his bearing. A former Army captain herself, Anna watched, anger rising in her chest. But she didn't speak. Not yet. The murmurs began. A teenage boy pulled out his phone, recording. A mother guided her child away, whispering about not staring. An older man muttered, "Disgraceful," but didn't step forward. Martin retrieved his card, his hands trembling now, as he opened his wallet again. He counted out crumpled bills, small denominations. Still short, he reached into his pocket for coins, laying them one by one on the counter. Kyle rolled his eyes. "Finally," he muttered, snatching the money. "Next in line." Martin gathered his bag, shoulders heavy. As he turned, his eyes met Anna's. No words passed, but she saw it all. Disappointment, not in himself, but in the world that had forgotten how to look past the years and see the man. Kyle turned back to Emily, smirking. "Some people will do anything for a handout." That was enough. Anna set her groceries aside and pulled out her phone, her jaw tight with resolve. "General Hayes," she said when he answered. "Sir, it's Anna Cooper. I need to report something you'll want to hear." The engine of Martin Blake's old Ford pickup grumbled to life as he pulled out of the Pine Valley Market lot. His hands rested on the cracked steering wheel, fingers tapping unconsciously in rhythm with the low hum of the motor. The plastic bag of groceries sat on the passenger seat, shifting slightly with each turn. The sun, low in the sky, cast long shadows across the street, and the golden light made the town look softer than it felt. Martin drove in silence, save for the faint static of the AM radio, tuned as always to the oldies station that Susan had loved. The music felt distant today, unable to fill the space left by what had just happened. His mind drifted, as it often did, to another drive, one he took 50 years earlier. The year was 1971. Martin was 24, fresh from the jungles of Vietnam, stepping off the transport at Travis Air Force Base. He remembered the heat that day, the way the California sun felt alien after so long beneath the canopy of green. And he remembered the faces, not of friends or family, no welcoming committee, No grateful citizens, just protesters. They held signs scrawled in black marker. Baby killer, murderer, bring them all home. Some shouted. A few spat. Martin didn't meet their eyes. He just kept walking. Duffel bag over his shoulder, uniform still dusty from the journey. There were no parades, no thanks. Just the sharp sting of rejection, so far from the chaos he'd survived. The world moved on, but that feeling, that isolation, never truly left. Every time someone looked past him, every time a cashier or clerk saw the cap and chose not to see the man, it echoed those first days home. And today had been no different. The manager's words, fake ID, Grandpa, trying to scam us, played over and over in his mind, louder than the radio, louder than the rumble of his truck. As he turned into the small gas station near the edge of town, Martin sighed and rubbed his temple. He pulled up to the pump, stepping out stiffly, feeling the ache in his knees. The air smelled of gasoline and autumn leaves. He moved slowly, filling the tank, the click of the nozzle steady and familiar. "Sir?" Martin turned, expecting, he wasn't sure what. Another rebuke, more suspicion. But it was a young man, maybe 19, wearing a grease-stained mechanic's uniform with Evan stitched above the pocket. His hair was messy, his hands smudged with oil. He shifted awkwardly, like he wasn't sure he should speak. "I saw the sticker on your truck," Evan continued, nodding toward the faded 101st Airborne decal on the back window. "You served, didn't you?" Martin nodded, unsure where this was going. "A long time ago." Evan hesitated, then squared his shoulders. "Well, thank you. For your service, I mean. My granddad was in Vietnam, too. He doesn't talk about it much, but I'm proud of him. I'm proud of all of you." The words settled over Martin like a warm blanket on a cold night. He felt his throat tighten unexpectedly. For a second, he couldn't speak. He managed a quiet, "That means a lot. Thank you." Evan gave a small, almost embarrassed smile and ducked back toward the service bay. Martin watched him go, feeling the heavy weight on his chest lighten, if only slightly. Maybe the world had changed. Maybe not everyone looked past the old man beneath the cap. As he finished filling the tank and climbed back into the truck, Martin glanced at the rear-view mirror, catching sight of the decal Evan had mentioned. The eagle still flew there, faded but defiant. And for the first time that day, Martin allowed himself a small smile. The memory of the market softened, if only a little, by a stranger's simple kindness. Anna Cooper stood by the automatic doors of Pine Valley Market, her shopping forgotten in the small plastic basket hanging from her wrist. Through the glass, she watched Martin's truck rumble out of the parking lot and disappear down the street, the fading light glinting off the worn 101st Airborne decal in his back window. Her heart pounded, not from anger, but from that gnawing feeling of, this isn't right. The encounter replayed in her mind, the manager's dismissive tone, Martin's quiet dignity, the hush that fell over the store as the insult hung in the air. The way Martin carried himself, shoulders slightly stooped from time and weight of memory, but his chin still level. The whole scene stung. Anna clenched her jaw and looked down at the phone in her hand. Her thumb hovered over the screen, her mind a swirl of hesitation. Am I overreacting? She asked herself. It's just one incident. Maybe Martin doesn't want attention. Maybe he just wants peace. Maybe I should let it go. But she couldn't. Anna knew that look in Martin's eyes, that mix of quiet sorrow and disappointment. She'd seen it before, not just in veterans, but in her own reflections some nights. The feeling of being invisible to the very people you'd once served. Her thoughts flashed back to a Memorial Day event years ago at the town's small veterans park. Anna had been invited to speak as the guest of honor, wearing her uniform one last time before retirement. After the ceremony, she'd stayed behind, helping fold chairs and gather up flags. That was when she'd first met Martin Blake. He was sitting alone on a bench beneath the memorial wall, his cap in his lap. Anna had recognized the insignia immediately. She'd approached, and they'd shared a brief conversation. Just a few words about service, about loss, about the friends they'd left behind. No grand speeches, just two soldiers, past their wars, paying quiet respect. That memory rooted her decision. Anna opened her contacts and scrolled down. Her finger stopped at a familiar name, General Robert Hayes. retired four-star, her former commanding officer, a man who still carried weight in this town, and far beyond. A man who believed in honor and standing up when others stayed silent. Is this really his problem? She hesitated again. Am I dragging him into something small? But her gut said otherwise. Martin Blake wasn't just anyone, and this wasn't small. She tapped the number. The phone rang twice before a deep, steady voice answered. Hayes! Anna felt herself stand straighter, out of habit. Sir, it's Anna Cooper. A pause, then warmth. Anna, it's been too long. How are you? I'm fine, sir. I'm sorry to call out of the blue. This isn't a social call. His tone shifted instantly. What's going on? I'm at Pine Valley Market. Sir, there's a veteran, Martin Blake. You might remember him. We both met him at the Memorial Day event a few years back. 101st Airborne, Vietnam. Today, he was humiliated. A manager here accused him of faking his veteran ID, loudly, in front of everyone. The line went quiet for a beat. Then, Martin Blake. I remember him well. Anna took a breath, feeling steadier now that she'd spoken. Sir, I wouldn't call if I didn't think this mattered. I know Martin didn't ask for help. I know he probably wouldn't want the attention. But I can't let this sit. I thought you should know. General Hayes didn't hesitate. You did the right thing, Captain. Stay where you are. I'll be there within the hour. The call ended, but Anna stood still, heart pounding, not from uncertainty now, but from resolve. The decision had been made. She looked out at the parking lot, emptying as the sun slid lower in the sky. Martin was gone, but justice was on its way. The roar of the black Suburban's engine echoed off the storefront as it screeched to a halt directly in front of Pine Valley Market. Doors slammed. The autumn breeze carried a hush through the parking lot as heads turned toward the sudden commotion. General Robert Hayes stepped out onto the blacktop, his presence commanding even before he spoke. At 68, his back was straight, his stride purposeful. He wore his full-dress uniform, deep navy blue tunic adorned with polished metals that caught the fading light. Rows of ribbons lined his chest. Bronze Star, Silver Star, Purple Heart, Defense Distinguished Service Medal. His beret was sharp, insignia gleaming. The weight of history seemed to walk with him as he crossed the lot and pushed through the market's automatic doors. Inside, conversations died mid-sentence. The beeping of checkout scanners seemed to quiet beneath the force of his arrival. Shoppers froze, some stepping aside instinctively. A few pulled out their phones, recording. It wasn't every day a four-star general strode into a supermarket, eyes hard as steel. General Hayes moved with precision down the main aisle, heading straight for checkout lane 5, where Kyle Dawson stood, still recounting his funny story to two employees. And then the guy tried to pay in coins like some cheap. Kyle's voice faltered as he caught sight of the imposing figure bearing down on him. The general's voice sliced the air, sharp and cold. Who insulted a war hero in this store today? The words echoed across the checkout lanes like a thunderclap. The store became a stage. The audience, customers with wide eyes, employees frozen in place, phones raised to capture the moment. Kyle paled, his cocky posture deflated. Sir, I didn't. Hayes didn't let him finish. He stopped a foot away from the counter, towering over the young manager. His metals glinted beneath the harsh fluorescent lights, his voice low but resonant. Martin Blake, does that name mean anything to you? Kyle blinked, swallowing hard. I didn't know his name. Some old guy with a card. Major Martin Blake, Hayes said, each word deliberate, measured, like commands on a battlefield. 101st Airborne, Vietnam. A soldier whose actions saved hundreds of lives when I was a young officer in country. A man who earned the right to wear that cap you mocked. A man who risked everything while you weren't even born. The crowd listened in stunned silence. Even the children seemed to sense the gravity of the moment. Hayes took a step closer. In May of 1970, during the Battle of Firebase Ripcord, then Lieutenant Blake and his platoon were cut off for 72 hours, surrounded on all sides. He led his men through the jungle, under constant fire, to rescue a downed medevac crew. When their commanding officer was killed, he took command, organized the defense of that position, and personally evacuated the wounded, including me. His voice softened for just a moment. the memory raw. I would not be standing here today if not for that man. Kyle's mouth opened, then closed. His hands fidgeted at his sides. He looked around as if hoping for rescue, but no one moved to help him. The employees behind him stared, ashamed. The shoppers watched, captivated. Hayes straightened. And you had the audacity to call his military ID a fake, to mock him, humiliate him. Here, in his own country, in front of strangers. Kyle stammered, his voice cracking. I didn't know. I swear. That's exactly the problem, Hayes said. You didn't know, and you didn't care enough to treat him with respect anyway. Anna Cooper stepped forward now, her arms crossed. Any veteran, any service member, all of them deserve better than what happened here today. Hayes nodded once. His gaze swept over the gathered crowd. You owe that man an apology, and not just him, but every veteran who's ever been made to feel invisible. The store remained silent for a long, heavy beat. Kyle swallowed, his face flushed with humiliation. Yes, sir, he whispered. I'm sorry, truly. Hayes didn't soften. Make it right. And with that, he turned on his heel, leaving Kyle standing small behind his register. The weight of his failure laid bare before the eyes of all. Outside, the general paused at the doors, looking out toward the fading sun. His job wasn't done yet. The next stop was Martin Blake's house. It was time this town remembered the hero who lived among them. The sun had long set by the time Kyle Dawson stood at the doorstep of Martin Blake's small home on the outskirts of town. The crisp night air bit at his skin, but it wasn't the cold that made his hands shake. It was the weight of what he had done and what he had failed to see. Beside him stood General Hayes and Anna Cooper, silent but resolute. The porch light flickered as Martin opened the door, his expression guarded, eyes wary. He hadn't expected company, and certainly not this company. Kyle cleared his throat, his voice unsteady. Mr. Blake, I'm here to apologize for the way I treated you today. It was wrong, disrespectful. I let my pride, my ignorance, blind me to who you are, to what you've done for this country. Martin studied him for a long moment, the lines in his face deepened by the porch's dim light. Then, with quiet grace, he nodded. Thank you for saying that, son. But Kyle wasn't done. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out an envelope, offering it with both hands. On behalf of Pine Valley Market, please accept this. A small gesture, a $500 monthly voucher for a year. We've also implemented a permanent 20% discount for all veterans at every one of our stores. And we're launching mandatory training for our staff, so no one else is ever treated the way I treated you. Martin hesitated, then took the envelope, not for himself, but for what it meant. A promise of change, however small. The apology didn't end at Martin's doorstep. The following afternoon, a crowd gathered outside Greenville's City Hall. Word had spread, first through the customers who'd witnessed the incident, then through social media. A local reporter's story about Martin's quiet dignity had gone viral overnight. People came carrying small American flags, wearing pins that had long sat forgotten in drawers. Veterans in faded caps, young parents with their children, shop owners, teachers. The town turned out. The mayor stood at the podium, flanked by General Hayes and Anna Cooper. And beside them, humble as ever, stood Martin Blake, his old cap in his hands. Kyle stepped up first. His voice carried through the microphone, steady this time. Mr. Blake, Martin, I stand before you to say I am sorry, not because I was caught, not because of the attention, but because I failed in my duty as a citizen. I failed to show respect where it was due, and I promise I will do better. We will all do better. A ripple of applause followed, genuine, forgiving. General Hayes spoke next, his voice strong. This isn't just about Martin Blake. It's about how we, as a community, choose to honor those who served. Let this be a turning point. Let this be the day we remember to look beyond the surface, beyond the years, and see the sacrifices that built this country. When it came Martin's turn, he stepped forward slowly, clearing his throat. His words were simple. I didn't ask for any of this. I didn't want to fuss. But if what happened reminds just one person to treat the next veteran they meet with kindness, then it's worth it. I accept these apologies, not for myself, but for every soldier who didn't make it home. The real heroes. The crowd fell silent for a moment. Then the applause came. Louder now, filled with gratitude and pride. That day, the town of Greenville didn't just honor Martin Blake. It honored the idea of respect itself. And for the first time in a long while, Martin felt seen, not as an old man with a faded cap, but as a reminder of duty, sacrifice, and the quiet strength that endures. The afternoon sun bathed Greenville City Hall in a warm glow. As the crowd gathered for a ceremony few had expected, but many felt overdue. Folding chairs lined the lawn, their metal legs digging slightly into the soft earth. Small American flags waved gently in the breeze, clutched by children or planted in the grass. A podium stood at the front, draped in red, white, and blue bunting. Behind it, a banner read, "Honoring Major Martin Blake, a hometown hero." Martin stood off to the side, feeling almost out of place in the attention. He had polished his boots that morning, the same pair he wore to Susan's funeral, and wore a clean button-down shirt beneath his old brown jacket. His faded cap rested firmly on his head, the screaming eagle of the 101st Airborne, as proud as ever, despite its age. The mayor opened the ceremony, his voice carrying over the hum of traffic and rustle of leaves. He spoke of duty, of community, of how sometimes a town needs reminding of the heroes who walk quietly among them. General Hayes took the podium next. His words were measured but rich with emotion. "Martin Blake represents the best of us," he said. "He fought with honor overseas, and he's lived with honor here at home. Not for medals, not for recognition, but because it's who he is." He spoke of Vietnam, of the bravery Martin showed at Firebase Ripcord, the lives he saved, the night missions, the wounded he carried to safety. The general's voice wavered only once, when he recounted how Martin, a young lieutenant at the time, had refused to leave the jungle until every one of his men was accounted for. When the mayor returned to the microphone, he presented Martin with a plaque. "In grateful recognition of Major Martin Blake's service to our nation and our community." Then it was Martin's turn. He approached the podium slowly, his hands gripping the edges as he looked out at the sea of faces, neighbors, veterans, children, strangers. His voice was steady, though soft. "I didn't expect this. I didn't want it, truth be told. I've lived my life quietly, like many who came home from war. But if today reminds even one person to pause and thank a veteran, or to show kindness to someone they don't know, then I'm glad to have stood here." He paused, his gaze drifting to the flag above the building, snapping in the breeze. "This isn't about me. It's about the ones who didn't come home, the ones who gave everything. Remember them. Teach your children their names. That's how we honor them." The crowd rose in applause, not out of obligation, but out of deep respect. As the ceremony drew to a close, Martin stepped away from the podium and walked quietly toward the Vietnam Veterans Memorial at the corner of the lawn. He removed his cap, placed it gently at the base of the monument, and stood in silence, the breeze stirring his silver hair. And for a long moment, the town stood with him. That night, after the crowd had gone and the echoes of applause had faded, Martin sat alone on his back porch, a cup of coffee cooling between his hands. The stars above Greenville were clear and bright, scattered across the dark sky like the names on the wall of the memorial. The autumn air was crisp, carrying with it the scent of fallen leaves and wood smoke from a neighbor's chimney. Martin let out a long breath, the events of the day washing over him. He hadn't wanted a ceremony. He hadn't wanted speeches or plaques. But standing there, seeing the town come together, veterans young and old, families, strangers, it reminded him that respect, once lost, could be found again. He thought of Susan. "You'd be shaking your head at all this fuss," he whispered into the night. But he also knew she'd be proud, not of the recognition, but of the lessons shared. Martin didn't see himself as a hero. He saw himself as a man who did his duty and kept his promises. But maybe, he realized, sharing his story could help others remember what duty and sacrifice truly mean. And so he sat beneath the stars, hopeful that the kindness shown today would ripple outward, a quiet reminder that gratitude costs nothing, but means everything. Tomorrow would be just another day. But tonight, Martin Blake allowed himself a small, peaceful smile. And so, Martin Blake's story reminds us of something timeless, that respect isn't just for the battlefield or history books. It belongs here, in our communities and everyday places like a grocery store or gas station. In today's fast-moving world, it's easy to overlook the quiet heroes among us. But a simple act of kindness, a moment of recognition, can bridge generations and heal old wounds. What happened to Martin could happen anywhere, and perhaps that's the real lesson: to slow down, to look up, and to see the people who help shape the freedoms we enjoy today. Now, we'd love to hear from you. Have you ever witnessed a small act of kindness toward a veteran? Or have you seen someone forgotten who deserved better? Share your thoughts in the comments. Let's start a conversation that matters. And if Martin's story touched your heart, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with others who value honor and service. Together, we can keep these stories alive and inspire a little more gratitude in our daily lives. Thank you for watching, and thank you to all who have served.